the working class rising up. This is the ruling class punching down.
My day, bigger your day.
First rule of gladiator school, bro. Don't punch down.
Charging into a goblin.
Hail Trump! The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Control your own body.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
We can fight the entire grinding system. Nobody can. But together, everybody can.
I did nothing wrong.
Hello and welcome to Did Nothing Wrong Live, the show that cuts through the noise and helps you make sense of the chaotic information space around us. I'm Griff Somke, and with me is Karl Folk.
Hey.
In today's episode, we'll cover the Trump administration's decision to prosecute New Jersey Representative LaMonica MacIver for exercising the oversight powers granted to Congress in Article 1 of the United States Constitution. We're also going to take a look at some of the newest immigrants to the United States and their feelings about the Jewish people. And we'll talk about Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's new immigration reality show idea that she collaborated with the guy who created Duck Dynasty.
I hate it here, Griff.
I know, I do too, man.
We're like day, like 120? Hate it here.
Hate it.
It's a bad place. Bad place.
Well, thanks again for your support and keep listening to learn more. And remember to smash those like and subscribe buttons like a Homeland Security desk jockey going after a member of Congress.
Do it.
Do it. So, if you listened to last week's show, you're aware that Mayor of Newark Ross Baraka and New Jersey congressional representatives LaMonica MacIver, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, and Rob Menendez, they were trying to get some idea of what was going on at a very controversial facility in the city of Newark. And then, for their troubles, they were confronted by ICE agents who actually put hands on them. And Mayor Baraka was actually arrested. And we played some of that body cam footage last week on the show.
Yep.
It's like a lot of body cam footage where it's very inconclusive, but apparently the Trump administration disagrees with me on this. And the word on the streets is that they're going to charge Representative MacIver for her role in the confrontation. No word yet on the street on what they're going to charge her with. But the fact remains that Article 1 of the United States Constitution gives Congress the right to do this. And it's been held up in numerous Supreme Court decisions that this is constitutional, right? People are out here trying to do their jobs. Congress is performing its oversight role, and the mayor of Newark is inspecting a problematic property in his city. And they were harassed, physically assaulted.
And he was charged with trespass.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. Baraka was is now being charged with trespassing. And the feds are doing the whole deal, right? Like he came out and said that he feels he's being, quote, that they're trying to, quote, humiliate and degrade him, but by making him give fingerprints and do the mugshot and do the whole deal. So, feds are, this is the real deal. This is an intimidation campaign as well as an attempt to really, accelerate the process.
And, none of these charges will probably stick. Like I said up front, the footage is very inconclusive. If anything, it makes the ICE cops look worse. I haven't seen anything that would imply that any of the Congress people or the mayor were out of line here. But like you said, I think we know at this point, it's not about individual convictions. It's about sending a message that this is what's going to happen to you if you question what we're doing in here. You're going to be beat. You're going to be attacked, disappeared, some cases gulagged. And they want us to understand that ending up in CCOT is a real possibility.
Yeah, no, and increasingly it looks like it's not just going to be CCOT, right? Like, Trump is now looking to export dissidents all over the world.
Yeah.
And specifically to countries that are either actively war zones like Ukraine or places that are...
Libya.
Yeah.
Who's even in charge?
Yeah.
I looked that up. There's like two separate, factions that claim they're in charge and a third one that does some similar stuff. Who are you sending them to?
Yeah, there's no recognized government, right? Like, and that's just it. That this is a signal. it's an acceleration, and it's also, an attempt to sow fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Right.
And it's continuing to get worse, right? Like, we're now starting to get more information kind of across the board on all of this, not just on what's happened to the mayor, but just across the board. And
Right.
I mean, ICE is acting exactly the way that the Gestapo acts,
Yeah.
right? It's accelerating push towards direct extrajudicial action, which they've already done, but this is much more open and brazen.
Right.
And I think, we're starting to see a better picture emerge
Mhm.
of the whole apparatus and what Trump and especially Stephen Miller and Russ Vought are
Oh, yeah.
actually doing. And, with the federal government now turning specific areas across the Southwest and the border region into militarized zones and doing that, plus this kind of thing, we're getting really into into a really heavy picture
Yeah.
of what the plan is now.
And I don't
And
think this is a coincidence. This is being talked about the day after Representative McIver has Secretary Noem in front of her in committee and asks
no,
her the following question.
Madam Secretary, it's not every day we have a cabinet member before this committee. As you know, the members of this committee have constitutional oversight responsibility for your department, and there are many things regarding this administration's homeland security policies that require our immediate attention. That is the work I am here to do today and every day. Secretary, this committee and the American people deserve answers for the actions of the Department of Homeland Security under this administration and the policies that have been put into place. The department has overseen a regime of cruelty, chaos, and deep disregard for human dignity, all under the pretense of security. The department is being mismanaged, and its policies undermine our nation's values. This does not make us safer. The exact opposite, exactly. Secretary, we need answers about your department's union busting at TSA, deporting U.S. citizens, terminating the legal status of international students for no apparent reason, and disregarding the rule of law.
And this is just so typical of the entire administration. You ask them a pointed question or two, and all of a sudden they're talking about putting you in jail. It's really something else. And we're starting to see help wanted ads for DHS. They're looking for construction workers. They're looking to build out these camps. Evidently, they're expanding their detention camps to multiple states, and it's like,
Yep.
Man, if I'm the trades, I'm not gonna sign off my workers to help build concentration camps. No way.
Right. Well,
No way.
well, and that's just it. I mean, right? Like, we're starting to see the full topography of American fascism and
hmm
the systems that are being built, and those are part of it. And when you're not willing to commit to adhering to due process, to questions of habeas corpus, if you're Stephen Miller,
Right.
we've got a picture here. And this isn't, we keep hearing people talk about constitutional crisis, this constitutional crisis, that. We're a decade past the constitutional
Yeah.
crisis. And
Yeah.
we're deep
That ship
into
sailed.
Yeah, no, we're deep into something that's far, far, far darker. And most Americans aren't seeing the disruptions that they think of being the norm when there's some sort of state takeover or state capture or coup going on. But effectively, right now, we're no longer a constitutional
No.
democracy.
No, we're not.
And we're quickly approaching a point where states are going to make a decision not to be part of the union.
Right. And they're
If
already
they
making
can.
that decision on a
Yeah,
soft level. I mean, like my own state
yeah,
of Washington has kind of
yeah.
decided, thankfully, that there's certain federal orders we're just going to ignore.
Mhm.
And this is going to start becoming more and more prevalent. And you may have noticed that nobody's stepping up to make Trump go along with the rulings that the lower
Right,
courts and the Supreme Court in some cases
correct,
have made. Congress has
correct.
said, hey, you can't do this. And Trump's response has been like, fuck you, and just keeps
Well, it's
doing it.
yeah, well, exactly. And this gets into,
The states are
you
starting to
sound
do the same thing.
yeah, yes. And, this is the concern, right? Like when power starts to get exerted in the way that Trump and the Republicans are using power in this really Schmittian friend enemy, kind of fascist way.
Right.
What you see is that, I think a lot of people, we've talked about it before, I've talked about it
Hmm.
online, people start to realize it's all just a construct. And when you realize it, the full weight of that understanding that these agreements that we have based our society on for for hundreds of years
Right.
are fundamentally just agreements.
It's a social contract.
Yeah, it's all contracts and constructs. So
Hmm.
when the fascist will to power is really the ability to say, okay,
Yeah.
and just continue walking through those things and driving larger and larger steamrollers over all of it.
Hmm.
And as much as Trump and the Republicans have had moments where certain things have been walked back, certain people have been released, as we've talked, the overarching damage is still being done. And that
Oh yeah.
damage is really um, being compounded every day by the next damage that's done. And so what we've seen is, a wholesale remaking of the federal government. And now the judiciary in certain ways is starting to reflect that.
Hmm.
And it's starting to infect kind of every level of discourse, both politically and outside of that in certain
Yeah.
ways. And that's, this is gonna we're starting to get into, this is how this works now for a long time, and unless we really um
We have to make
get
a
our
push. This
no.
has to get pushed, and this has to get pushed soon because at some point it's too heavy. It's too
Well,
entrenched. And what
you've
then?
lost, yeah, it's too solidified, right? And
Hmm.
like realistically, it doesn't feel like it at first, but then you start to actually feel its weight, and then the weight never stops.
Yeah. This is
And
just how things are now. And
yeah,
that's where
and
we're
yeah, and what we've started to see here is that's being expressed both politically and, you know, more broadly socially. We're starting to see how people are reacting.
yeah.
And, in some cases, it really has been kind of people moving away from any kind of consumption of media, but in other cases, it's overconsumption. In other cases, it's people really detaching completely from any semblance of like what has actually happened to pursue something that's much safer for them.
Right. And that's where we get into the whole managed democracy concept.
Yes,
This is the
yes,
genius, evil genius of a guy like Vladislav Surkov, who
yes,
builds out the entire information space. Not just like, oh, this is the stuff we want you to look at. Everybody's information space is built out. And the
yeah,
goal is to get you in your own silo. Just
yep,
the truth is too hard. The truth is too
yep.
complicated. We can't even find it. What we're going to do is we're just going to check out and like get into our own reality tunnel. And that's all we can really
And
process.
we're just gonna live there,
Hmm.
right? Because it's easy, and it's easier in our own reality bubble. And the whole idea that of modern propaganda at some levels to get you to tune out. It
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily want you to go over to one side or the other. It's just to exhaust you. And what's been interesting is like Trump is exhausting, but I'd actually argue that Trump 2.0 is not as exhausting as the first time around. He's just much more brutal. So the news cycle is much more
Hmm.
just degrading.
I had
And,
this thought about this the other day, actually, this same sort of thing we're talking about here. I think that there were a lot of people during Trump 1.0 who were actively saying that Trump was behaving in this 2.0 manner. And
absolutely.
he wasn't, not yet. He didn't have enough
He did-
of the
yeah,
state captured to be able to do it. Not like
correct.
this. I would
No.
argue that with almost any of them. Not like
Yeah,
this, he didn't. But
agreed.
we are now seeing the exact behavior that there are people that I thought were kind of completely full of shit during Trump 1.0 because they were saying, oh, he's doing all of this, where he was objectively not doing all of this. But now he's doing all of this. So if we
Yeah.
could bottle some of that 1.0 rhetoric and say, okay, these people called it back here. These people said it was going to be like this. And sure enough, it turned out to be like this. The reason they were off is because he just didn't have enough of the state to pull it off yet. Now he
Right.
does.
Yeah,
And
no,
that's
and
why
that's
you're seeing it.
well, I'm someone who was somewhat in that camp, right? Not in the
Right.
camp that overstepped, but in the sense that, like, he had the impulses there, the pieces that he wanted were on full display. He couldn't achieve them.
No.
This time he's achieving all of it and plus some. And I think people really wanna play this off as what, as some, "Oh, this is gonna be over in 4 years.
Yeah.
We're gonna impeach him in 2." It's not like that anymore,
No,
right?
no, it's
Like, and
not.
we've talked about this ad nauseum on this show, but, like, there's no ability to go back now
Yeah.
because there's nothing to go back to. These people have effectively destroyed the state,
Yeah. Trump
and
smashed the
they've
state.
yeah,
He did
and
it.
they fundamentally reapportioned society to their viewpoint, right? And
Yeah.
they've done that through sheer willpower. They've resegregated a significant portion of civil society through resegregating the government. We can see their end goals here on that. We can see that they're also aiming now for certain things um, through both legal and judicial, or through legal and legislative, tax, that they're really planning something that's much bigger now.
Oh, yeah.
And this unconstrained vision of the Russ Vought, Stephen Miller, new right kind of triumvirate here is,
Yeah.
is bad. Is bad. And arguably they're not looking towards the next election. They're looking towards the next consolidation of power.
Yeah. And we saw another example of that this week where we saw that they finally went ahead and restarted because they had shut down the refugee policy altogether. They weren't letting refugees into the country since the
Yeah.
Trump administration took over. Didn't matter where you were from. Didn't
Yep.
matter, what war-torn hell you were fleeing. No, sorry, we don't want refugees. But they finally found it in their hearts to let some of these poor folks in. And you almost have to give it to them. They finally found some refugees that they think are worth having settle in the United States. And who are these poor beleaguered souls, and what kind of persecution must they be fleeing in their homelands to finally manage to melt Stephen Miller's frozen heart?
This week, the Trump administration brought a small number of South Africans to the U.S. as refugees, including nearly a dozen who will resettle in Twin Falls, Idaho soon.
So the president says he's bringing them here because of the, quote, genocide in their home country. The South African government, though, strongly denies those allegations. Just 4 months ago, Trump suspended the State Department's refugee admissions program. Doing that blocked new refugee admissions for everyone. So local refugee advocates are wondering why the administration is welcoming this group and not others.
White South African farmers. Dang, why didn't I think of that?
That's exactly the one. The white fucking boar
White
farmer.
boars. And I'm using the phrase farmer loosely here because some of these people are farmers in name only. Finos, I mean, we've got a guy by the name of Charles Kleinhaus, and per his own LinkedIn, he owns a granite mine. Honey Badger Granite.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I know,
no,
right?
That's just it though, right? Like this, we were joking before we turned on the camera today. Like, this real quickly is gonna have to get everyone on understanding, like, the Rhodesia movement, the white identity movement, Christian identity. I mean, this tracks so much of the worst part of the white power movement and different really extreme subsets. It's almost, if we didn't understand that fascists just wrap everything in absurdity to a point where it's almost painful, we would look at this and be like, wow, this is impressively on the nose. This is, though, exactly how it's going to work, right? Like, under Trump 2.0, under the fascist administration, the people who will get deference are going to be literally other fascists. And in part, that's because Trump wants to import the next 2028.
Oh, yeah. The crop of voters, basically.
And also because these people want to turn America into a white ethnos.
Right. And, you can say, oh, well, maybe you're being a little hard on these guys, but
we're not.
No, because Mr.
We're not.
Kleinhaus has plenty of opinions about the
Yeah.
Jewish people,
Yep.
namely that they are, quote, untrustworthy and dangerous. And these
Yeah.
are opinions
Wonder.
that he likes to post on social media. So
Yeah. I
we
wonder
all
what
know
he
about
says.
it.
Wonder what he says in private.
Exactly. And one of the things that the administration has claimed that they're really focused on right now, and part of the reason that they're deporting students, is anti-Semitism, right? Their own definition of
The
anti-Semitism.
biggest air quotes. The
Yeah,
biggest
air
air
quote,
quotes
air quote, air quote, air quote.
imaginable.
We're going to do a lot of air quotes in this show today, folks, because there's a lot of air
Yeah.
quote stuff going on. So they've been
Yeah.
saying anti-Semitism is a huge problem, and we are going to deport people for, anti-Semitic statements. We are going to send people out. But they let this guy come in who said all this kind of stuff, and it's like they gave him a chance to walk it back. He did an interview with the Washington Post a couple days ago, Thursday, and he denied being an anti-Semite, saying that
Right.
he had been taken out of context and that we had him all wrong. I'm going to quote him here. You get angry, you get irrational, you say stupid things, Kleinhaus told the Washington Post. It was completely misinterpreted. It's not against everybody. I was speaking out about the people there. I was very, very angry with the video, and I will protect my Christian heritage and my Christian faith all the way, he continued. I probably should have worded it better. And I gotta say, considering all the history, I'm not sure positioning himself as a Christian defender of the faith against the Jews is really any better than what he's been called out for. In fact, I think it's actually kind of a lot worse.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is not good, man. And you start talking about how, because the guy's a big, big, big fan of Israel. He loves Israel. He's got all this
Yep.
Israel stuff on his Facebook, but he
Wonder
doesn't
why.
like the Jews. He thinks they're dangerous and trustworthy, but he loves Israel. That's really weird, right?
Yeah.
Not really.
Interesting how we start to get back to the whole far right use of philo-Semitism in place of
Mhm.
the traditional anti-Semitic attack line. And this is what we've seen now repeatedly over the last 5 years specifically, but this is the way this works now.
Yeah.
And so understanding these dog whistles, understanding the massive ties between things like Christian identity,
Right.
like white nationalism, but more specifically, white power, views of both Israel and religion. Like all of this is in line with some of the gnarliest
Oh, yeah.
far-right and fascist ideology out there.
Well, I want to walk through, just because it's been a while. We've talked about Christian identity quite a bit on this podcast, but it's been a minute. So I just kind of want to go through this real quick so everybody's clear on what we mean when we say Christian identity. This
Yes.
is an offshoot of something called British Israelism. And
Yes.
originally the idea was that the British are actually the true Jews of the Bible, the true chosen people, and that the Jews are the ones that usurped this from the British. Now, when this made the leap to Los Angeles in the early days of the Azusa revival, it
Yes.
made the leap that it was the white people, not just the British people, but white people in general were
Quote
the real
Anglo-Saxon,
Jews.
quote, like this is where the quote Anglo-Saxon thing starts.
Anglo-Saxon, right?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Exactly.
And this is a philosophy that has been the backbone of the Aryan nations, of the order, groups
Yep.
like the Covenant, the Sword and the Arm of the Lord in Arkansas, the Phineas priesthood. Most,
Yes.
I would even say, of the militant white supremacist groups have bought into some variety of this.
You get into William Potter Gale, you get into a whole bunch of different
You get into
stuff.
Richard Butler.
You get into Aryan nations and the
Like I said, it's the foundational text behind all of that stuff.
Exactly.
And when I
Yeah.
hear guys like this that have problems with Jewish people, yet think Israel is great, they start
Correct.
espousing this, it makes my skin crawl.
Well,
Because it
especially
doesn't
when
go
you
anywhere good.
Yeah, especially when you couple that with the obvious white identity politics going on, the other things that are tied to this, and
Yeah.
there's just a lot here that raises big alarm bells. And
As it
for
should,
those
yeah.
of us, and for those of us who've done this work, like this screams importing hardcore white power neo-Nazi, like super hardcore neo-Nazi
And
types.
leave us forget the governing system that South Africa was under for decades was called apartheid. And it was
Yes.
literally legalized caste system that the blacks in that country did not and would never have the rights that a white person did. You had like, I think it was 5% of the population that was white of, European descent was controlling the entire country. This was not tenable. At some point, this was not going to last.
Well, right. And I mean, and the whole thing, like, then you get into the RWPP, like the Rhodesian White People's Party.
Yep.
You've got all of this. And I mean, this is all, it all just ties back into its own history, right? And like, that's the problem when we start talking about some of this more niche kind of stuff that Trump's doing. This is stuff that is so blindingly on the nose and extreme. Like, it really cannot be overstated how extreme this kind of thing is, especially when we are going to come to find out that a number of these people are, Rhodesia believers and people who, have really interesting flags in their homes, things of that nature, because ultimately, like, we see it.
Right.
The pattern's there. And if we're importing this kind of Nazi and white power individual and group, from what it appears, there's some other questions that need to be asked of our foreign policy and what we're doing going forward as a country and what groups we're going to actually be working with. Because if this means that America is going to be empowering white identity, Christian identity, neo-Nazi groups worldwide.
They've taken this non-controversy, this thing that was basically whipped up on VDare of all fucking places about, white genocide in South Africa because some people sang a song about killing Boers and they didn't like it.
And let's be very clear. Rightly so, they were singing that song about killing Whitey. Excuse me.
Sorry, and again, we're two white guys saying this, and I understand that's problematic, but
that's the reality. Like, if you choose to be an apartheid regime and you choose to be what's essentially a proto-fascist movement, well, shit.
Yeah.
Fuck around, find out. Like, that's just the reality. That's just the reality. Like, it's one of those things. Like, these quote white farmers are not white farmers. Like, the largest air quotes possible. And as you said earlier, they're not farmers, right? Like, these are
what does a granite mine cost these days anyway? I mean, that's probably more money than I've got in the bank. What about you?
Well, and historically, if his family's owned it for any length of time, how do they run it?
What do the employees look like?
Yes.
That's a great question. That's a really great question. And it's interesting that Elon Musk comes from a similar background.
All I'm going to say is we are going to hear more and more stories that really don't look outwardly as crazy as they are. And this is an example, like, they're trying to build a white ethno state.
They absolutely are.
They're, all of this, we've been inundated for so long with the white birth rate is falling. We need to, all this damn near 14 word shit. And this is what that looks like in practice. They're trying to do the thing to build a country that's white and for white children.
Yeah, yeah. And we've got a new, like, God, and it just gets worse because Kristi Noem, I think, has to be like one of the most just rotten people in national politics.
Genuinely an evil person.
This is the woman who shot her dog because it wouldn't hunt pheasants, it would only hunt chickens. Yep. This is a woman who has posed out for glamour photos in front of the prisoners at CCOT. They're just, God, what is wrong with her? And now, her latest thing is just, I mean, it's a reality show. And it's not just any reality show. It's a reality show where they're going to have people competing with the prize being U.S. citizenship.
Yeah.
Like, if you do whatever it takes to, shank your neighbor or whatever, you're going to end up with U.S. citizenship. She's partnered with, like, one of the producers of a show called Duck Dynasty. And I got to be honest, I've never actually watched that.
I've watched exactly half of one episode on an airplane one time, and
You're a
I
better
can
man
tell
than me.
you
That's all I know.
it is exactly what you would expect
Right.
from a show that is literally about a family in the South, and their whole thing is basically like,
Aren't they like crocodile trappers or something?
well, they're duck hunters. Let's
Duck
just say,
hunters. Okay, that's what it is. Right.
but
See,
the
told you.
whole thing,
Never seen it.
but like they build their own duck calls, so they're super. I mean, this is a super wealthy family masquerading as a bunch of hillbillies.
One of
And
those, got it.
yep, and
White farmers.
you know, so the show is really kind of perfect as the emblem of Trump's like consumer fascism, right?
Right.
Is like, we are going to fake a show about a family that's actually very well off, making their money off of people they pretend to be,
Right.
and then sell it to you back at a premium.
Consumer
And
fascism. I love that. That is great. That is such a
well,
great way to put it.
ultimately, that's what fascism is,
Meh.
right? Is just a malign form of capital. And in America, capitalism's consumerism.
Right.
And so if you have an American form of fascism, the integral part of that's going to be figuring out how to turn the fascist, you know, terror into a consumptive product. And so
Right.
this is the first step in that. This is the Paul Verhoeven future, right? Like this is the Running Man. This is the most just like fucked up visions in some way of the 1980s like sci-fi future. And
Right.
you know, they want to build it, right? And some of that's because these people were raised in that culture of watching it, but also because it is the logical endpoint for American capital, right? Is to start consumerizing the terror of the state and human suffering, right? And like Noam is dark. Like she's a bad person, and for her to be kind of just gleefully on board.
Well, let me point out that her press secretary, her assistant secretary, Tricia McLaughlin, did tell CNN in a statement that, quote, DHS receives hundreds of television show pitches a year, ranging from documentaries surrounding ICE and CBP border operations to white-collar investigations. Each proposal undergoes a thorough vetting process prior to denial or approval. She says that Noam has not backed or even reviewed the pitch of any scripted or reality show, and that contradicts reporting that the Daily Mail and the Wall Street Journal have reported on. And you find yourself kind of thinking, why all the CYA? Why not just say, no, fuck that. That's just horrifying and terrible, and we're not doing anything like that. Why
because
not
they're
just
definitely
shoot it down? They're thinking about it.
But they're definitely, yeah, they're planning to do something along those lines, right? And because it makes a lot of logical sense for what American fascism is and what you need to do as an authoritarian to normalize yourself.
Yeah, I mean, his own pitch is The Biggest Loser, but for immigration.
Yeah.
And the idea of like, we're going to see who wants it the worst in terms of this is not what we were based on. This is not who we are.
This is The Apprentice for citizenship.
Right. And I mean, The Apprentice, who was the star of that show? Mark Burnett and Donald Trump.
Yep.
May they all burn in hell.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's just it, right? Like this is the real deal American distillate, like fascism. And the fact that we're even having a conversation about the fact that they're entertaining reality TV based torture, essentially.
Yep. And I mean, you were the first person I ever heard use the phrase weaponized unreality.
Well,
And
I coined the term for a reason.
Right. At the time, it seemed kind of like, whoa, this is really a next level concept. And then reality shows, which are, of course, not reality, which are just gross and dark on their best, days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is now taking on the concept of U.S. citizenship. This is literally like corporate power merging with state power. And I believe there was a phrase for that, something to the effect of fascism. Wow. I'm
and I mean,
fucking shocked. And they've wrapped it up in concepts that you've been talking about for a couple of years now, saying, hey,
Yeah.
this is something that they're doing. You better watch out for it. And man,
Well, it's really tough,
got any
right?
lottery numbers?
I've spent they've all been wrong.
Damn it.
I try every couple months. No, it's really tough. Like, and I've gotten real quiet on it in certain ways because this right now we're seeing it. And
Yeah.
we're starting to see what it really looks like in a fully weaponized state. And, you know, as I've said here and in other places publicly, like I started at coming to the far right in the US by studying Russia's unreality. And this is now the American franchise of that, right? And not because Russia took over.
No.
But because this is the same thing that has happened every time they've taken over, which is the media reflects the kind of authoritarianism of the movement that's taken over.
It's a model that works.
Yeah. And the American model of fascism is a hyper corporate, hyper macho, incredibly aesthetic, you know, movement. And so this is kind of what, you know, for sociologists like myself and others, this was always where it was pointed. And now to see it, you know, I've been unplugging more than I ever have, partially because we all have to now, but partially because the trajectory from here, barring some massive cataclysm and upheaval, doesn't get better for a long time. And we have to kind of marshal ourselves here to understand that, like, this summer is going to be one of the scarier times in American history. And
it's going to be make or break for a lot of things, that's for sure.
For pretty much damn near everything. And we're just going to have to accept that and work with it. And it's going to mean being fluid. It's going to mean understanding that these people are no longer some kind of far away, oh, this is something that might happen down the road. It's happening now.
Yeah.
And the damage that's been done isn't going to be undone without us doing hard work. And, you know, I think all of this, today's episode's been especially dark just because we've
sorry about that.
Welcome to us having a week. But that's just, you know, the reality is we have to understand the thing we're dealing with to be able to really face it. And with Noam, you know, this is, they will try and monetize every portion of the process of fascist brutality. And I actually think this is going to have harder purchase than some others do, in that I don't think this is going to be widely consumed yet by Americans. And I don't think I think there's a good chance that it doesn't get made for a while.
Right.
The fear is that it does get made at some point, and that means that the population has become
that desensitized to it.
Yeah, normalized and desensitized.
Because the thing is, they stopped talking about this again, and they shouldn't have, because his poll numbers were going down when they did.
Yep.
The more you tell Americans about what they're doing in the immigration arena, the less they like it.
Yeah.
They like to think they're the good guys, and when they have to hear that these folks that are up until now have been, you know, essentially desk jockeys, and I had this argument with a person on Blue Sky the other day who seemed to take issue with my phrasing of desk jockey. He preferred cops that do most of their work remotely over, you know, email from a desk. So I get that desk jockey sounds a little pejorative to you maybe, but the fact is they've pulled these people off desks and they've put them out in the field.
Yeah.
And we saw that in Worcester, Mass. We saw that in any number of raids that we've seen footage of these guys. You got guys out there wearing cargo shorts doing ice raids. And part of it is because, well, up until recently, these people never actually thought they were going to have to go out in the field because they didn't. And now you've got this whole scene of folks that aren't trained to do this kind of work. These videos come out, people who are, for lack of a better word, normies, they see it and they're like, oh my God, this looks like a bunch of ragtag, you know, not disciplined, just thugs that are just snatching people off the streets. It's everything that you've ever heard it was going to be.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
living up to it.
Oh, yeah. No question. And I mean, that's just it, right? Like, this is the formalized or unformalized groupings and authoritarian maneuvering that goes on in the early days, right?
Mhm.
Like, by the time whatever we want to call this force has its own insignias and uniforms, we're so deep that there's probably not much coming back.
Yeah.
So, like, this is the thing, and I think there are some good questions as they are people involved with this paramilitary? Are there deputized civilians?
Yeah.
That's a different line of questioning,
Sure.
though, than this, right? And, like,
I mean, for now, I'm willing to take that guy at face value that these are
100%.
people that are in the office that just don't get out much.
100%.
And when you take people who are desk jockeys and try to make door kickers out of them, which is what you're looking for here, sometimes it does not go well.
No, in fact, 99% of the time it doesn't. As
Yeah.
much as the police are fuck ups and as much as the police have a track record of being racist,
They train for
right,
this kind of thing, and if they
that's
didn't, you really
yeah,
wouldn't want them around.
it would be even more fucked. Yeah,
Yeah, seriously.
exactly. Yeah, no, and that's just it. And, like, when you do have people in the line of, like, actual public door kicking, when they don't have any experience, shit looks bad
Oh, yeah.
because shit is bad.
Mhm.
And,
And
like, with no training, something that's already abhorrent becomes untenable in a way.
you can't look away
Yeah,
from it now. And it's gonna end bad. One of these raids
yeah,
is gonna end real bad. And we're
yeah.
gonna get a big national conversation about it. There's gonna be discourse, and everybody's gonna be like, "Well, why did all this happen?" And it's like, because you are doing something immoral. You are doing something
Yeah.
absolutely immoral, and at some
Yep.
point, it was gonna blow up in your face because you didn't have the staff, you didn't have the training, you didn't have the resources, you insisted that this all had to be done right now. This was
Well,
the way to go.
and you're doing something that most people recognize correctly for
Mhm.
being abhorrent.
Abhorrent, yeah. It's the best word. This is not something that, I mean, this is just wrong to watch all of this happen and find yourself thinking that they couldn't possibly make it look any worse than this to some extent. This is terrible.
Well, and I mean, I think that's the point, right?
Mhm.
Like, again, it's terror, it's uncertainty, it's doubt, it's all of the things, and, like, we have a moral duty to stop these things from happening if you're,
Yeah.
witnessing.
If you see it.
And that's really tough for people who have been propagandized for decades to believe that any kind of, resistance, quote unquote, to militarized members of law enforcement is automatically bad. And, like, I don't know. It's so hard because you don't want to make a lot of
No. No.
comparisons, but at the same time, like, I keep, you know, I keep watching these raids and these broad daylight, snatch and grabs. And, I really can't not think about the Anne Frank quote of, like, that, terrible things are happening outside. Poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared.
Yeah.
And, like, that, that was what, January of 1943
Yeah.
that Anne Frank wrote that? And, like, we invoke certain things at certain times, but this is the real deal, and we have a moral duty to stop it.
Yeah.
And we Americans don't have conversations about our moral duty very much.
We're not very
And
good
so
at it. When we do, it tends to be heavy-handed and just
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so
This
let me
is
just say this. The people on roughly our side of the fence don't nearly talk about this enough.
That's yes.
The
And
other guys,
that's
they
it.
talk about this kind of stuff all the time, but for the most part, they're full of shit.
Well, and they also then tie it to some shit where they're like, empathy is a sin, and if you have empathy, you're effeminate. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's really it's fucked up. No, but that's just it, right? Like, people of good conscience actually need to have a longer conversation amongst themselves and individually,
Right.
about what actually is their line. Because we have crossed most of the lines for like purely from an academic lens, from a counter-authoritarian, counter-far right lens, we've crossed every one of the major bridges that lead to either mass violence or genocide. And we've crossed them without any kind of abandon. And most Americans don't even realize the kind of danger they've been put in.
Nope.
And that does require us then to have a much different conversation outside of the political, but just our moral duty to others and ourselves and to to democracy.
Right.
And to restoring democracy in the future, because we don't have it right now.
And it's been so quick. It's been so quick to happen. It's not been something that's happened gradually. It's like you can boil the frog so fast the frog didn't realize he was being boiled. And that's what's happened.
The thing is, and I think people will come to find this out later, the pot was boiling for 25 years.
Yeah.
We boiled in 5. That's just how it is now. And for all of us, that means we have to really have that conversation more often and probably more clearly and explicitly. What is your line?
Yeah.
At what moment does it go from you being a passive day-to-day member of the society, and at what point do you become culpable for the inaction of the society? And I think people need to ask themselves that, and what that actually is going to mean for them going forward in a society that is governed by people who are going to maximally tie us to the ship with them.
So that's your homework for the week.
Yeah.
Everybody who's listening to this, I mean, I'm not your teacher, I'm not your dad, I can't give you homework assignments, but I'm going to give you one. Think about where your line is. Think about what it is that you personally are going to put yourself on the line and say, no. Maybe I don't win, but I'm not going to let any more of this happen. Are we there yet? Because it really feels like we're there. And I don't know what more you need to see before you say, no, I'm sorry, I'm done.
That's the thing. Most people think of what we're dealing with in historic terms, where they're looking back on something. The reality is we're in the history now.
Right.
And if we wait until the banners are unfurled in front of the White House, if we wait until there are tanks rolling across the street on Pennsylvania, we're going to
that's coming.
And it's coming fast. We are going to lose something that we can't gain back without massive repercussions.
Because the particular circumstances of our founding are very unlikely to repeat themselves anytime soon.
And if they do, it's not going to be in a way that people walk away from in any kind of normal capacity.
Yeah. We may walk away from this in pieces.
A lot of us are going to come away from it truly different.
Yeah.
It's the nicest way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. That's just the reality. This is about to change all of us.
I mean, ask yourself, are you the same person you were 4 years ago, 8 years ago? Are you the same person you were in 2015? I'm not.
I'm not.
Yeah. And it would be nice to be able to go back to that particular part of life. But, politics has an interest in you, whether you have an interest in politics or not. Doesn't matter. Politics is coming for you. So
exactly.
Here we are.
Here we are.